Okay. I think she's gone. Oh, thank goodness. Man, I wanted to try alchemy on this. Ugh. And I mean, ooh, who can complain about the results? But man, it was hard to breathe in now. Ooh, 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 ooh. Yes, very good results. Alchemy solves another problem. I hope you're ready to open up the workshop and start some crafting as we join in Atelier Sophie The Alchemist in the mysterious book DX version. Though the DX is later version, still is the original version's name. So this is the Switch version of this. Now Sophie is an interesting landmark in the series. Now, I want to be upfront. This is the first time I've played through any entry of this series. Sophie is like the 13th or 15th entry in the series. I'm not quite sure its number order in the franchise since, well, the series doesn't usually really go by numbers, though several entries have gotten sequels themselves. They really, though, lumped into certain sets, like Sophie is part of the Mysterious series, where there's also the Dusk and a few others in that. So I'm not 100% sure how many entries, but I know it's in the double digits at least, but it came out originally in 2015 for the PS3, PS4, and PlayStation Vita in Japan, and would come to America for the PS4 in 2016, and PAL territories also in 2013. It would also come to computers in 2017, and then we would get the DX versions for PS4 and Nintendo Switch in 2021. Though the only physical version of the version I'm playing here, the DX version, was on Switch. PS4 version is digital only of DX. So the original Sophie game is, available in quite a few platforms and a few ways. Now, like I said, this is my first time playing any entry of this, and I'm going to be upfront to you. One of the reasons I never really got around playing one of these is I don't really like crafting. I'm not a fan of crafting. And, this is a series that is heavily built on crafting, so I never really gave any entry a fair shake. One of them I played one time and just didn't really have a good first impression. I honestly don't remember which fucking one it was, to be honest. But this was a viewer voted title by Pad for the streams, and with that, history was started. So Sophie, as far as I understand, is the first entry to get rid of what was apparently a long-going system of having a time system. Now, as somebody who loves Dead Rising and has a much poor view of Dead Rising 3 and 4 because of them messing with this mechanic, I can definitely understand long-term fans of this franchise having a similar feeling with Sophie. I don't know if that exists, because obviously I didn't play this during its era, so I don't know if that was a thing back then in 2015's time era. But if it was, I can understand, because having a very common mechanic in the franchise just mysteriously vanish kinda is a bit, honestly, though, considering I'm not a crafting expert, it kind of worked in my favor because it gave me a much more relaxing experience. Because honestly, having the time system would probably made it more stressful for me personally, and probably had to save scum a whole lot, like I'm playing Resident Evil or something. But that's just my point of views on that. Until I get the play entry with the time mechanic, I can't really comment much on it, because again, this is my first time playing one of these. I just want to address that. I can definitely understand if anyone comments in the perspective of that. But moving on, it is indeed a game centered around crafting. Most of the series, from what I understand, likes to take a stance of being quote-unquote a relaxing JRPG experience without the stress in the most cases, from what I understand. And the game does that. There's a lot of colorful characters, and everyone's very, for the most part, upbeat and trying to have good time relations and helping each other, doing things they do. Each character has their different goals, and some are more simple than others, while a few others have more complicated systems. But in general, yes, the game does not really have a Kefka or anyone poking you in the back of your head saying, "Ha ha ha, you failed again, hero," as they dash into the darkness to do something else evil in the world. You don't really get that until way near the end, so it is definitely very different for me as somebody who's played a lot of JRPGs. So Sophie's story, as the subtitle hints, is about a mysterious book. Sophie's grandmother passed away and she takes care of her workshop and finds a mysterious book that's alive. In this, Sophie basically decides to help the book regain memories, which slowly go into the progression of the storyline of the game, learning more about this character and finding out about their past and leading into the conflicts that would later poke their nose out to lead to the end of this story. The cast is lovely, but they're also very, well, how should I say, not crazy. I mean, how put it? Like, I want to say they kind of like remind me of Xenoblade Chronicles. Like a criticism I said was Xenoblade Chronicles. Well, on one hand, they have some kind of a very basic, maybe even a kind of a base stereotype kind of personality of anime characters, but their interactions and stuff are what really build their characters to be more than what that is, if that makes any sense. If you played Xenoblade Chronicles, you can probably get what I mean. Though I do find one character particularly interesting in breaking stereotypes. Oscar is a very interesting character because he's a farmer. He's a plant dude. And he gets to join your party and kicks ass. He's also very chubby. Now, you know, I'm not trying to pull the whole divorce card here or that, but, you know, I do gotta give some prompts on having a bit of a different character. Oscar definitely fulfills the clownish goof character of the party, and while doing that, he also fulfills being a bit of a different character than that you normally see. So, I give a little few props on that, on the fact that he also has different movesets using a shovel and his planting knowledge in combat. So, I find his character to be kind of interesting compared to the other cast. Now, I don't know, maybe there's a long-going set of farmer characters in the series or something that join you. So, maybe I'm just crazy, but... but, I'm rambling. We should get... and start at the beginning, because I know I ramble a lot. So, as I said, Sophie finds book, talks, goes, helps it, and over the progression of the game, you will meet different characters with different goals. Some are just helping you with your task, others have their own reasons of joining you. Some are very minor, and others are a little bit more to it. But as you progress through the game, you'll do tasks and chores, some story related, some are just friendship related. There is a friendship system here where you can get gifts, give gifts and that. I didn't go too deep in that, but I imagine if you did, could get some interesting rewards out of that. And there are borrow requests that give you a lot of your money, money. So the general loop of the game is you have a day and night system, so you go out and explore during day and night. You can encounter different enemies and find different items depending on the time it is, and you basically go out to a field, you look for materials, and you have different categories of materials in that. Some of these are requests for at the bar, they'll request some of these items and some of them will be required to make things for some of those requests or for story-related purposes as well, as there will be things that you have to make to progress in the story and fulfill requests necessary to keep that progression going forward. Luckily, you have lots and lots of space to carry all kinds of freaking crap in your inventory. Being a game where materials are required to make shit, well, it's important to have such space. Now, the max amount of crap you can hold is 5,000. At the end of the game, I have 3,288 items. So, you get lots of space. Lots of space. Now, as you progress through the recipes, there are different tier versions of the recipes, and you'll unlock items. You can unlock some are usable items, healing items, equipment, stuff that you can use and affect the field in that. You'll unlock lots of crap. And there's still stuff I never even got made or figured out how to make on some of my recipes. See, I think the first two I got everything. No, there's one thing on the second tier I never got, talking to a fortune teller. I never found a fortune teller, so I don't know where the fuck that is. But you don't certainly have to make everything. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff on the last page recipes I never made. But what's interesting in how the recipe system goes is essentially you'll get hints at recipes, like I said with the one on the second tier of recipes. I need to talk to a fortune teller to get the idea for this recipe. Until I do so, I can't make that recipe. So you'll get hints to things you need to do, whether gather, heal, kill something, use a certain ability. So you'll have to figure out things to figure out recipes. So you have to get a little crafty on some of them. You gotta get out there and go! Equipment is pretty run-of-the-mill in its understanding basic. You have a weapon, you have body armor, and 2 accessories. What gets crafty in this game is because of, well, again, being a crafting game, you get to make the materials. So, essentially what you want is you want to make the materials you use to have the weapons and armor produced, or the accessories. Now, the weapons and armor are made through NPCs, so you bring them the goods that they need to make them, and they make them. Accessories you make at your own workshop. What's interesting about weapons and armor, though, is that you basically make the materials, get the traits you want to carry over to the things you want to make, and those traits will greatly affect that. So I never got like the best armor or the best weapons in the game, and I still beat it because I put a lot of useful traits on them. So you don't necessarily have to buy the greatest shit in the game if you put very good traits on them. And even then, I would say I got the greatest of the great. Because, you know, to a certain degree, I didn't go up and beyond what I could. I kind of went with what I had on hand for most cases. So, you truly can make some amazing gear. Now, what is really different in here is items. So, you can equip up to 5 items in every character. And different characters will have the capability of using different items. So, not everyone can use every single item. There's some kind of, like, to be honest, I never really fully understood it. There's some kind of, like, weight capacity or something, and some characters don't meet that properly or something. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's something I never really fully understood, why certain characters can't use all items. Kind of odd. So, when it comes to, like, healing restorative items, you do have a limitation, and every item has a usage amount, a count, in which generally is usually about, like, 2 to 4. So, you get a few uses out of most items, but once used up, they're consumed. Though later on in the game, you can get an interesting service that instead of losing the item, you just kind of restore the count for a fee when you go back home, which is very useful for some really good items you make. Though even without that system, there are ways to make them available for porches. So there's a duplication method as well. And on top of that, for Sophie, now the other characters don't have this mechanic, but Sophie does, a explorative equipment system. So the exploring equipment just affects usually things on the field and gathering stuff, or sometimes how you move or enemies and that. It depends on the stuff you slap on them, but they affect things outside of combat. And they're generally there to, usually for the most part, help you with gathering, but there's a few other different things. But those are only items that Sophie can equip onto her own being. Now, there is a formation system. This is a 4-party system. So you can have up to 4 characters join you, which is pretty nice, because you do get a pretty big group of characters. Up to 9 characters will join you in your journey if you seek them all out. Now, I don't know if you can truly miss anyone. I think you would have to go out of your way to miss some of the characters, to be honest. But generally, yeah, you will get up to 9 characters, so you can have 4 of them join you. So, you'll have to be a little selective on whether you want to stick to the same 4 characters or whether you want to swap it up. Sophie, this is, again, a little bit of a negative here. I always feel it's a bit of a shame that some games don't give you some freedom to kick the main character out. Sometimes I feel like it gives you an interesting idea to add a little more strategy to your game sometimes. But, yeah, that's a debatable thing. But Sophie is locked in, meaning you can only bring 3 of your characters of your total party with you. Now, what's odd about this game is max level is 20. I don't know if that's normal in this series. But, yeah, you can't go beyond level 20. So you might be like, well, if you max out that soon, then what do you do after? Well, after you get a new type of point for leveling up. So your EXP bar will become advanced XP, and you'll get skill points instead of just a increase to your stats. And your skill points can be used for skills, which will improve the pre-existing skills the character has, as they all have their own unique magical skills. Their passive skills, as they all have interesting passive advantages that affect different things. And then you can increase their individual stats on top of that. So there's some nice things here and there that you can do, but it's kind of interesting. It's a little bit of a mix of a skill and leveling system. So it's kind of interesting to see both of these systems in one game. Because generally, you know, they go one way or the other usually, with like a skill tree, or like you level up and you have your skill tree to choose your abilities you learn, or just strictly stick to leveling up, and as you level up you unlock moves. So it's a little bit of both. You'll go through and you'll get new moves and stuff. And then once you hit 20, you'll get skill points to advance those moves to better abilities that will either affect... It will either make it like a better effect, or even just change it into a much better ability altogether. Now, being a crafting game, there are many items, monsters, because monsters also drop stuff in that, so you can also get things from them as well. So you have an encyclopedia that is very helpful in this game at finding out where items are. Like, if it's like, well, I need this specific material, I don't really remember where the fuck I get and shit. And you can get that information through your encyclopedia to remember where things, and you can clip it so you can easily remember shit and stuff. So it gives you a lot of good information to help you retain what the fuck you're doing in this game, because there's a lot of stuff. Now when it comes to the crafting, you'll pick the item you want, and then you have to pick a cauldron. Now, at the beginning, it's easy because you only have one cauldron. But as you go through the game, you can make and find more cauldrons, and you can even enhance the cauldron's functionality by synthesizing the cauldron itself, making it even more effective with effects on top of it. Each cauldron does different things, and depending on how you modify the cauldrons themselves, you can make those even more effective. And generally, it's kind of like a weird kind of Tetris kind of thing. So you get a grid, you have energy, and depending on what you're trying to do, you need to put certain blocks that you have on those energy. Now, they synthesize better when they match each other. So when you put down a thing, it'll increase energy on there around that block piece you put down. So you'll see the effects, like when you make an item, you'll see what colors are associated with a line. If you get it filled past that line, it generally means an effect will be added to the item when it's crafted. So you want to try and basically get as many effects you can on something. And it takes time to, well, do that. But you'll want to try and get everything you can, because, well, you can get some nice goodies, man. You can get some really nice goodies. And honestly, something I would tell you to get really used to in this game is bombs. Bombs are outrageously powerful in this game. You can get some amazing shit with bombs in this game. And initially, I didn't find crafting very engaging. And to be fair, to a certain extent, I didn't get super deep into a lot of crafting. Like, honestly, if you want the greatest and best stuff in this game, you would spend a lot of time. Like, I remember some shit I made. Sometimes I spend 30 minutes to like a fucking hour making some shit. You spend a lot of time making shit in this game. So I hope you tolerate crafting to some extent. Now, probably older games were probably more difficult in the crafting. I feel like the crafting is not as annoying in this, but it's still not necessarily my cup of tea to spend hours on hours trying to get all the right materials, to get the right traits, so I can make my staff really fucking powerful. Because one of the things in that regard is they kept getting new versions of weapons being available, and it just kind of disheartened me to upgrade my weapons too often, or I would have to go through the whole process again of getting good materials and shit and stuff. Until it became possible to duplicate shit and stuff. Those services made it a lot easier, because then you could make really good versions of those materials and be able to keep versions of those, and if you want more, get them duplicated and shit. So it does become easier to do that, but early on it was a little disheartening to me that to like put a lot of blood and sweat into gear and then be like, oh, here's new armor and weapons available now, and then so I wouldn't go too batshit crazy on your gear, but making some really good bombs I definitely recommend. There's a lot of different types of bombs. Basically, let me put it this way. At the point I am with bombs, I have bombs that are ballistically insane, man. How insane? Well, would you believe me if they, how should I say, fucking one-shot most regular enemies? Yeah, that's pretty painful, right? Yeah, you can make a bomb that basically one-shots normal enemies. That's ballistically crazy in my opinion. But you can do that if you actually figure out the formula and shit and make them. You can make some really dangerous stuff. You really can. Graphically, the game is very charming. It has very nice anime aesthetics and that. So if you love your JRPGs, you'll love the game likely. It has very nice clothing and everything. And I don't know how much of a upgrade this is to the original PS3, Vita, and PS4 versions. Because being that it was made for PS3 as well in mind, I'm going to probably go on a limb and say this isn't probably too heavily upgraded. Because to be fair, the town and the environment all pretty PS3-esque era looking, if that makes sense to anyone. So, while it's not going to wow anyone like a Persona 5 game, it certainly isn't awful looking. It functions for the environment and stuff. Overall, though, it is very colorful, bright, and cheery, so it's a very nice up-pace setting, honestly. Monster-wise, there's well, honestly, monsters would be something I would really criticize in this game. There's a lot of repeating enemy models. And in general, there are not a lot of monsters. They are very repeating with only a few unique monsters. Like I said, you don't really have like a Kefka type villain poking you along the way of the game. The main villain comes really late in the storyline. Though you get hints at them, and I'll admit, I did call out the villain. It was a possibility, though, when because, you know, I'm playing through the game, and I'm like, oh, well, what's going to be the conflict here? And I made an obscure guess on a few different things, and one of those predictions did come true, so maybe you might be able to guess it, maybe. Potentially, possibly. But yeah, there are not a lot of monsters, because there isn't, like, an overarching villain that's throughout the story. So, yeah, there's a lot of repeating monsters, and while they're all cute and simple looking, they're very repetitive, and for the most part, a good half of them are very generic in that sense. There's a few later ones that have a few interesting designs, but again, they get reskinned to hell, so yeah, there's not a lot of monster variety. It's pretty, yeah. Being that this game does not have the scheduled time set that many of the games were apparently known for, it does still retain a clock in a day system. You know, you have day and night, and you go to sleep at your home and stuff, so it still retains a system like that. It just doesn't, like, you know, game over you, or you're too late for something or anything. You're freely able to progress through the game at your own leisure in this, which does make it a friendly entry in this, which is why, to my understanding, Pad recommended this when he was he voted for it, but it's why he chose it, because it was apparently a beginner-friendly entry of the series. Now, to my understanding, later entries of the series are doing the same thing, where they're just kind of dropping the forced scheduled time system. So, again, I can't really speak on that system, because this is my first entry, but I can understand long-term fans who may not like that, because it being a long-going system in the older games. So I can understand that. I can relate, because that's why I criticize Dead Rising 3 and 4 a lot, because to me, like, with 1, 2, and what was the not Chop Till You Drop, that's kind of a really strange story in itself, but the what was the Case West? You know, the time system was a very big system in all those, so it just, I can relate to that if you have that kind of feeling with this game. I can relate to it. Now, the DX version, as I said, I'm playing on the Switch, added several new things. You can speed up combat and such, so making the grinding aspect of the game a lot faster and fast forward through stuff. So that is helpful, and you do get English and Japanese in at least the DX version on the Switch. I can't speak for every other version in that regards, but you do have English, and the fact that there's English voiceovers, I'm specifically talking about voiceovers, means that likely those did exist in the older versions, but I don't know for a fact, but they likely did, since there is some for this. Overall, Sophie was a pretty nice game, honestly. It left a very nice forced depression, and you can, it's pretty friendly. It's not super difficult, and it's a nice entry. A beginner's friendly entry. I have to agree. I look forward to trying another title. It will likely be one of the mysteries, since the physical Switch game comes with all 3 mysteries on it. And so it's more likely I'm going to play one of those 2 next, likely, because obviously I probably want to try and get that coin, because it always sucks when you get a collection, you only play 1 game in the collection, you never get the rest finished, and it's just sitting there in your unbeaten section just because that. But I definitely look forward to trying some more entries of this series. And on that topic, with a remake of the original, it's kind of a remake reimagining, because my understanding, the older entries are kind of a mix of a tactics style combat, and apparently this new version of the original game is going to be more of a turn-based affair, so it's not necessarily exactly the same experience. Though it's interesting to see that they actually localized the original game, but that's only available digitally, which is really heartbreaking, honestly. Really debating about begging limited companies that maybe look into getting a physical version of that made, because I think that needs to be done, because we don't have the original version, any physicality, and when the stores go down that, it's lost time aside for piracy and all that, so. But, that's a whole different, dwindling off of topic here. Now, when it comes to combat, when you're on the field, enemies can see you, and they'll chase after you, or you can run away from them and such, and you can also get the surprise hit on them. Now, sadly, this kind of reminds me of the course of Persona 3 trying to get first hit. I still think it's harder in Persona 3 to do it, but admittedly, I do feel like it has a little bit of a lacking range that makes it a little iffy to get the first hit when they're coming straight at you if you don't one up behind them in the right angle. So once you engage in combat, whether you get force moves, surprised, or just nobody really has the drop on each other and it's just going to go by normal speed and that, you're presented with a similar looking system to Final Fantasy X, where you have a bar showing where everyone's turns are and lining them all up with their attacks and stuff. Now, you have a plus pad kind of system menu where you have your skills, item, defend, you can run away, or just do a generic attack. Now, one of the interesting things with the combat is you can do defensive or offensive support. So, you have this chain link bar, and as you go through combat, it builds up, and it starts affecting your support type. So, depending on how you got your characters set up, whether they're set to offensive or defensive support, if they're set to defensive support, they will do things to try and assist the party defensively, whether it be taking damage, blocking in front of people, or possibly trying to balance HP a bit in everyone's favor, while offensive will mean your characters will assist in dealing extra damage to your enemies, which I find more useful overall, personally. But in some tougher fights or boss fights, defense definitely can have its functional uses as well. And as Chain Link builds up, you'll be able to pull ultimate type abilities of where up to 3 of the characters will chain link together to deal with an interesting supportive, or well, it can be a defensive or offensive support. But they all 3 have to be on either defense or offense. And this can lead to devastating buffs, debuffs, damage, healing, all kinds of effects. And it really depends on the characters you pick. So they can have very, very nice moves that can be triggered as this builds up. Now, the chain link resets at the end of combat, so you can't carry it over to a new fight. You have to build it up in the one instance that you're fighting. So it adds an interesting flow to combat. Because if you didn't have it, combat would be pretty stereotypical for a JRPG outside of bombs being really fucking strong in this game. I'm telling you, invest a lot in the bombs. Don't make my mistake and do bombs about mid to late game. Invest early. Bombs can be super useful to you. I'm serious. Dead serious. Learn how to make bombs. Make good bombs. Actually, one of the characters is really good with bombs because they're able to use bombs multiple times because the way their character is designed. Because, like I said, each character has their different playstyles in that. And, of course, it depends on the playstyle you choose you want to learn. Now, I didn't use every single character. I used about half the characters. So, in general, there's probably a few other strategies I never really looked into because I didn't use everyone. Because this is the type of game where you don't have to use everyone. This ain't one of those games where, oh, your characters are going to split here and you're forced to use these characters here. Or this moment's going to tell you you have to have this character on your party and stuff. You don't really have that in this game. You are free to use the characters you want in the game, so it's very generous in that sense. Overall, Sophie is a very delightful game that I honestly enjoyed overall. I didn't get the full use out of all the crafting in general, but I do recommend checking out Sophie if you've never played this franchise. If you're looking for a much challenging entry, you probably want to go into a more older entry of this series. But if you're looking to get your feet wet, Sophie definitely worked for me. I'm a seasoned JRPG person, so that kind of aspect isn't new to me, but crafting, I'm not a big fan of crafting, like I said. Like, stuff like in Dragon Quest VIII, it's a cool mechanic, but it just feels like it leaves you lost to just randomly try shit. This game helps you a lot in knowing what you need to get, and usually helping you direct where to go to get most items. There are a few times where I had to kind of search for some stuff. So, but for the most part, you can get the assistance you need to find where to go with that. Just explore everywhere, and you'll fill up your index with locations and what is where and who has what. So it becomes usually kind of hard to get into a situation that you don't know where something is. Just explore the areas during day and night at least once, and you will generally get the location of most items. So, but of course, I do recommend checking out multiple locations multiple times to find a few of the werewolf things, because some materials are uniquely found in certain places with certain traits and benefits and that, and you'll need some of those to get what you want. Later in the game, one of your party members is also quite unique. All your characters, like I said, have their unique quirks to them, because they all have different passive skills and abilities that do things. But one of your characters is completely unique because you get to modify them. Now, I don't want to spoil who and how this works exactly, but basically you'll use crafting materials to affect their body, and this will actually modify not simply how their stats and stuff is, it will actually modify even their clothing. So you'll even give them different fucking outfits on top of the modification of them. If you're wanting to get one of the older versions of Sophie, you're going to only have access to the PS4 version for English language, because we never got the PS3 or the Vita version, which as far as I can tell, the Vita version was actually digitally only in Japan, so that's kind of interesting. If you're wanting an English copy, of course, your only option for older version is PS4, which generally seems to go between $40 to $60. So you're going to be paying a little bit for that version. Now, I don't know 100% sure if any of the story content's different between DX and the original version. I do know there's a post story in this game. I don't know if that is exclusive to DX or not. I don't know for sure. I couldn't find the answer to that. But if you're wanting to go with the DX version, digitally and physically, the Trilogy Collection is $89.99 US dollars. Now, if you just want DX, Sophie DX, digitally you can buy them individually. Also, apparently, Japan also got them released individually on the Switch, apparently? From what it seems to me. Maybe somebody can correct me, but according to eBay listings, I do see these individual Switch cases of just Sophie. So it seemed that they got individual releases in Japan, but the likelihood you're probably not going to be as interested in getting the Japanese versions, but you can get for Vita and PS3 if for some reason you want to go that front a little bit more around the $20 to $30 range. But if you want it physically, as a lot of us usually do, you gotta get the trilogy on the Switch then. It's the only way to get the DX version physically on the Switch. Now, PlayAsia, luckily, does have the English. It's an Asian release, and it has English and Japanese. It is the version you'll want to go for, but yeah, $89.99. Yes, that is very pricey for what was essentially PS3 JRPGs. Yikes. And the Dusk version, Dusk Trilogy also has a $89.99 trilogy as well. So that'll be something we'll cover maybe one day another time, though. It is very expensive, and I probably am very sure that once they sell out, they'll probably go up in price. Now, luckily, like I said, it is available on other systems in other ways too. But if you want the newest version, this is the way you go. Ultimately, how much would I value Sophie, though? I really enjoyed the game, and I understand it's an older title at this point. But honestly, I think $40 is a good price point for this game still. It being a JRPG, you still get a decent amount of time out of it, and it's an enjoyable, colorful experience with nice music, characters, and comfy vibes to it. I enjoyed the title, and I recommend it. But, you know, that trilogy is expensive, but it is 3 full JRPGs. But then again, you know, I also used a counter argument with like the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters not really being justified for their price, but that's a bit, you know. Anyway, though, that you could try to look for a sale. I got mine on a PlayAsia sale. Whether there'll be another one, I don't know in that regards. Now you might wonder about the spoilers. As I said, the villain does not poke their head out during the progression of the game in at least a very Kefka way. But I did call out in one of my probabilities of who or what the villain was. And one of those was the 2 little children. The strange witch, fancy clothed children you see through several scenes through your progression through the story. They were strange, they were odd, and they asked too many strange questions, and also knew of the cauldron of knowledge. And this led to them ultimately being a high-ranking possibility over the progression of the game. Of course, at the beginning, when many things were still unknown, I had guessed possibly the mysterious book could turn into the villain. Maybe they remember their evil or something after all. They didn't remember who they was. And memories can be fickle things, as you know. But the villain turned out to be punished and split in half to avoid their capabilities of doing a alchemy or harm to the world. But upon opening forth the cauldron of knowledge, through your conquest of memories, you gave the villain the opportunity to fuse themselves back together, and thus to become whole, and thus to continue insane experiments that they used to do prior to being split into two. And this leads to your final boss. It's kinda anticlimactic in a way, and it does make me wonder if the villain shows up again, because you do get them split up into the two children again to live out like that. And I mean, there's a lot of entries in the series, and there's a lot of opportunity to use them for other things. So it would be kind of interesting to see them torn up in another title, maybe with a different attitude, or finally thinking about the actions they did or something. Or perhaps they could just be evil still and try to find some other way around shit. Who knows? This is a pretty big series, and honestly, I don't even know how they even remotely start getting into the lore of this series because of how many entries aren't even Japan. I mean, we got a fair number, but so, like, the later half of the series, the beginning to that point are very Japan only. So there's also a chunk we don't have. So, and I imagine it's such a freaking nightmare to probably even know all the times, periods, and shit of this series. Must be interesting to know it all, though. Anyway, though, those are my thoughts on the ending, basically. It's kinda, it's not the end of the world, but it's not necessarily terrible either. It gets the job done, but overall, Sophie turned out to be a pretty decent game, honestly. And I look forward to trying some other entries, and maybe try to do one of the ones that have a timer on it, where it actually does punish you. That would be an interesting thing to play after finally getting to try one of these. Because I think one thing to note is, one of the ones I did play was a long time ago. Like, I think it was PS2 era, so I was a younger and less open person about a lot of gameplay mechanics and stuff. And as you all know, I dabble in a little bit of just everything except for, like, sports, basically. Other than that, I dabble in a bit of everything. So, let's see what the future holds. But overall, those are my thoughts. If you feel like you learned something interesting, feel free to leave a like. And if you feel like you learned nothing interesting at all, feel free to leave a dislike. Feel free. And until next time, thank you for joining me here at the Pooh Grounds. Be careful out there. You never know what talking books might mislead you to unlock cursed cauldrons. Until next time.